around a big, dumb dog. That's even worse.
No, that's better because at least a dumb dog loves you.
Yeah, and in theory, they chase out the mice.
No,
That's the
you're
solution
thinking
to
of
the
cats, sir. You're thinking of cats.
It's Friday,
Yes, sir.
and we love Fridays. This Friday is the day we get to not only learn about civil procedure, but also engage in Schadenfreude, which is the thing we get to do when we talk about sanctions. How many of you love reading about sanctions? Yeah. How many of you feel deeply uncomfortable reading about sanctions because you're thinking that could happen to me? All right. Well, listen. Let me tell you one thing at first that is going to make you feel better about your whole life and career. Are you ready? This was making the legal gossip internet rounds yesterday. This thing that was actually filed in a real court in Tennessee, where I guess they do things a little differently than we do here. I practiced a little in Tennessee, and I don't recall this, but this was the motion to dismiss, the answer to the motion to dismiss that was filed. And if you don't see anything wrong with this, you should see me in office hours. However bad you are, you won't be this bad. That's the good news. You won't do this, will you? You haven't even done this, most of you, in my class.
Is it just
He's not representing himself.
I can't figure that out. Yeah, that's a good
Is it
question.
just because they didn't
Like,
fill
it
it
could be
in?
that this poor lawyer's stuff just got copied into a pro se pleading, and now he's getting trashed every place. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I can't tell. I can't tell. Anyway, you'll do better than that. But I mean, do you see that kind of thing get filed even by real lawyers?
Yes.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. But you won't, because you had this class, and you know what you're doing. Except for you people wandering in late, that's a secret that you'll never ever learn. Very important secret. All right.
I don't know. I guess they
So
could-
where are we on our magical journey through this imaginary lawsuit that we've been talking about all semester? Well, we started off by filing a complaint. And maybe in a real case, maybe you wouldn't even file a complaint first. Maybe you send a demand letter first and hope that you just get a magical check out of nowhere without having to litigate at all. That happens a lot. It's kind of beyond the scope of the class. You file your complaint, you get the complaint served. Then what? If you have something you want to change about the complaint, we talk about Rule 15. We talk about amending the pleadings. Then what? Dispositive motions, the early dispositive motions that the parties can make. Motion to dismiss being the most common one, and then also a motion for judgment on the pleadings.
Bless you.
And you can furiously scribble this down if you want to, but it's in your syllabus. Okay? And then you have answers. Did the complaint get answered? And if not, can you file for default judgment? And your initial disclosures in the federal system, the stuff that you have to provide to the other side. Okay? Now we're on planet discovery. The discovery devices we've talked about so far are, what are we talking about? We're talking about interrogatories and some
documents.
What? Request for production of documents and what was it again?
Depositions.
Request for admissions, yeah. We're not on planet deposition yet. We'll do that next time. But for today, discovery violations. When you're not getting what you want out of discovery, or the other side is doing something bad, how do you handle that? All right, well, what if, two different ways to think about it. First is, what if you asked for something, you didn't get what you want? The other is, what if the other side asked a bad question you don't want to answer? Right? Let's deal with the first question first. What if you asked for something from the other side, didn't get a satisfactory answer? Right? The example I have here, a familiar example, should be a familiar example to you. Request for production of documents that says, produce all the plaintiff's medical records since 1987. Plaintiff is going to object to that, and what's the basis of the objection? Overly broad, unduly burdensome, usually the language you use, but I'll take overly burdensome, why not? Right? Too much stuff. We're not giving you all that stuff, that's too much. It's not relevant, right? All those records that you're looking for are not relevant to the act. Not reasonably calculated to, what is it? Lead to discovery of admissible evidence? Yeah, okay. There's that magic language in the state rule, don't forget about that. You're the defendant. Plaintiff has tendered just that objection and no medical records, and what are you going to do?
Can you write him a letter?
Can you write him a letter?
Yeah, just go ahead and write him a letter.
A strong middle version, right?
Say like, this is discoverable information, and send this on over.
I would. Write him a letter. Can you just make a phone call? Why do you have to go to the trouble of writing a letter? It's more formal. Is there anything you might use that letter for later?
Oh, for sanctions.
Maybe. Let's not even get to planet sanctions yet. Why do you need that hard copy correspondence? Or it could be an email. It happens that way a lot. Why do you need that hard copy correspondence between you and opposing counsel? Yeah.
You need to have made a good faith effort to get the bomb before coming to the court.
But you can do that over the phone, right?
But you held the hard copy, so I actually did make the difference.
Show it to the court. Show it to the court. Right? Much better practice. Then what? You send a letter and you get no response. Then what?
Then a motion for order on discovery.
Huh?
So a motion, for.
If you read the rule that I gave you, what's the rule we're looking at this week, guys? I don't remember. God, you don't remember either. 37. 37. When you're not getting what you want, Rule 37 contemplates two different things that you can do. What are they? Nobody knows. We've already talked about it. Emily, what are the two things you can do? Of course, you read the rule.
Yes, I have. Motion to compel.
Motion to compel. And what else? Sometimes you can move immediately for sanctions, I hear it, right? You guys notice that in the rule, right? It's split up into two different parts. One part talks about your motion to compel. One part, well, most of the rest of it actually, from B on, is talking about sanctions. Those are two different devices. Normally, most of the time, right? When there's something squirrely with discovery, it's going to go like this. You got your letter to opposing counsel, followed by a motion to compel, followed by a motion for sanctions. Okay? You don't always have to do it in that order. We'll talk about the exceptions, but mostly that's the roadmap that you need to have in your head. In this particular hypothetical that we're dealing with, you write your letter, please give me this stuff. Your objection is nonsense. I am in fact entitled to it. They say no, go pound sand, and you file your motion to compel. Note the difference between the stuff that's going on in 37A and the stuff that's going on in 37B and after. 37B, where your real meat of sanctions lies, right? All these wonderful things that you can do to torture the other side, that the court can do to torture the other side. Okay? This is mostly contemplating that there's an order in place ahead of time. So you gotta go to the court, you gotta go to the other side first. Say, give me the stuff I want. Then, if you still don't get it, you go to the court and say, order them to turn it over. Because most of the time, again, all this discovery that's happening between the parties is not going to the court. The court doesn't see it. And they don't want to be involved in it. They don't care. It's annoying, right? Imagine you're the judge and you're presiding over a bajillion different cases, and then you're getting pelted with hundreds and hundreds of pages of discovery at the same time. They don't do that. They don't want to be involved in your discovery disputes, and that's why it's baked into the rules that you have to try to work it out before you ever come to the court. They don't like it. So before you go to the court looking for sanctions, generally speaking, there's got to be an order in place that says, yes, in fact, the other side has to provide that stuff to you. Big exceptions here. 26A1. What is 26A? It's 26A1. We've already covered it. What happens in 26A1? I'm hearing it. I mean, you can say it louder. Those are your initials disclosures, right? Now, has the court ordered you to turn over the stuff that is required in 26A1? Is that an order of the court for you to turn that stuff over? By the time you get into discovery, the discovery phase of your litigation, has the court ordered you to turn over the stuff that is found in 26A? Who says yes? Who says no? Wow. Only Ryan's got it right. The court has ordered it by that point in time. Why? Why does that happen? Kelsey.
You have it before the 26th conference?
You don't have to have it before the 26F conference. What happens in the 26F conference? 26F conference, the court puts together this document called a, Seth? Yeah, the uniform, remember what I put up for you guys on the blackboard? The uniform case management plan. And does that become an order of the court? It sets out the dates. Remember, we looked at it. It sets out the dates by which you have to turn over your 26A material to the other side. Right? And then the judge signs it. And after you have your 26F conference, the judge signs it. And if the judge signs it, is that an order? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. That case management plan is an order of the court. You have to follow it. But for most of your run-of-the-mill discovery stuff, you're not going to have a specific order from the court that says turn it over unless you go seek that from the court. And the way that you go seek it is with your motion to compel. What do you think has to go into your motion to compel? Well, you got to have the heading, right? That's simple enough. Know that. Then what? Then what? What happens, Neil?
So I actually have this question. Not a lot of case law out there saying what is discoverable information, but they do have what's admissible. So do you need like a whole bunch of case law saying like, hey, this is admissible evidence, therefore it's discoverable? Or could you be like, well, this is discoverable, and like lead to
Well, it depends, right, on what the nature of the thing is that you're actually seeking. So we've already said, for purposes of the federal rules, that does something have to be admissible to be discoverable? No. But if it's admissible, isn't it probably discoverable? If it's admissible, it's probably discoverable. So if you're giving the court case law that says this is admissible, I think generally speaking, that's probably a pretty good strategy. If it's admissible, it's got to be discoverable, right? If it's admissible as evidence, if you think you're going to get this in trial, it's got to be discoverable. Right? So I don't think it's a bad strategy. If you really just can't find any case law that says this is how we should resolve this particular discovery dispute over this particular kind of document, then why not work backwards from this is admissible, so it's got to be discoverable? Right? Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. So what are the pieces, right? You have the heading. What's the content that you want to put in there? Yeah, Chad.
The certification that the movement has in good faith conferred and intended to confer, the making a disclosure discovery.
Yeah, and where do you get that? Chapter and verse.
A1.
37A1. The very first thing you see in that rule is you've got to include the certification that you've conferred with the other side. Okay? Motion must include a certification that the movement has in good faith conferred or intended to confer with the person. That's different than the stuff that you would put in your run-of-the-mill motion, any other kind of motion that you can come up with off the top of your head. Then what other stuff? Well, the same stuff that, and you might want to pay attention to this, the same stuff that you have in any other motion. Some sort of statement of jurisdiction, not necessarily something that's drawn out as a statement of jurisdiction, but something that tells the court they have the authority to do what you're asking them to do. And in the case of a motion to compel, just cite Rule 37. Just cite 37A. Okay? Are there other things you can cite? Yeah, maybe. The relevant facts. How did you get to this point? What brought us here today? Why the information you're looking for is discoverable. Your certification that you confer with the other side. Signature block, of course. Certificate of service, of course. Exhibits. What are you going to attach to this motion? What would you attach to it? I heard it. What? The letter. The letter that you would, any correspondence between you and opposing counsel. Look how reasonable I'm being in this correspondence. Judge, look how reasonable I am, and look how unreasonable the other side is. That's ultimately what you want to be able to say. Your job, especially on these discovery disputes, is to be the most reasonable person in the room at all times. Got this? Good? Yes? Committed to memory. Here we are. Miscellaneous things. In 37A, it tells you that you can make a motion to compel in the middle of a deposition by stopping the deposition and then going to the court. Okay? Why would you ever do that? Seth?
If the other side's attorney is telling the person for not answering questions. But I don't think.
You shut down the whole deposition for that?
If you, no, you probably shouldn't, but I was told, and I was on the side that if someone was trying to do that to you, you just tell them that we're going to keep conducting the deposition, and you can ask whatever else you want. And then if you want to go do your motion to compel, you can argue that. And then once they do that, you can say, you know, that we're not
Yeah, everybody hear him? Got that? Yeah. You can shut it down. In most cases, you probably want to plod on through, and you can take it up with the court later. If the other side is being super, super obstructive, then you can shut the whole thing down, take it up with the court, and set another deposition date, or what I've seen commonly done, around here anyway, and I think some of the local rules contemplate this too, is that you get the judge on the phone. You can stop the deposition and say, all right, we're going to get the judge on the phone and resolve this. You don't want to overuse this because it makes the judges grumpy. Neil, you have a question?
Oh, yeah. So if they don't show up.
Yeah. No, that's different.
Okay.
That's different. We'll get there. We'll get there. This must that shows up throughout 37 is sort of a squishy must, right? You read this, the court must order expenses or attorney's fees to be paid by the side that loses a motion to compel, unless what? Unless what? Bottom line it for me.
Unless their opposition to the motion is substantially justified or other circumstances make an award of expenses unjust.
Say it in English.
So if there's not really a bright line rule and reasonable minds can differ on whether something's discoverable or not, then they're not going to award sanctions for that.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to order, well, we're not even talking about sanctions yet. We're talking about expenses and attorney's fees. But later they employ the same language when it comes to sanctions. And they say, we're going to order expenses and attorney's fees unless there's a pretty good reason not to. Unless there's a pretty good reason not to. This is where it becomes really important for you to know what's Rule 1 of Civil Procedure. Know thy judge. Right? This is where it becomes really important for you to know your home court, custom and culture in your region that you're practicing in, and how likely it is that just because you lose a motion to compel, you're going to get slapped with the fees from the other side. I've seen it happen very rarely in Kentucky courts. Your mileage may vary. Sanctions. What happens? The other side disobeys a court order. Now you've got a basis to go back to the court and say, look, here's something you should be really grumpy about, court. The other side disobeyed a direct order, an unambiguous order of this court to turn over this stuff. Don't go running to the court with a motion for sanctions unless you really, really mean it. And what you see, the case we read today, the lead case, is that the other side had been building a discovery case against opposing counsel for a period of months before they went to seek sanctions. This is not a thing that you run to the court right away on, except in a few particular instances we'll talk about. Sanctions are not that common. Courts don't really like to award them. Again, this is just my experience talking. And there may be some courts that love to sanction attorneys. But I've never seen it. So you gotta be careful, you gotta be delicate, you gotta be reasonable about when you ask for this stuff, right? Special note about the request for admissions. I gave you this hypothetical last time. You receive a set of requests for admissions, and you're like, I'm gonna make them prove everything, so I'm gonna deny every single one of these. Make them prove it. We demand strict proof thereof. They attach a document that clearly has your client's signature on it. You're like, the hell with it, we're going to deny it anyway. Then later, when you are uncomfortably squirming while your client gets grilled under the hot lights by opposing counsel in their deposition, you're of course going to ask, is this your signature on this? Your client's like, yeah, it's my signature. Sure. There's something eating at the back of your brain. Why? Why am I so bothered by this? Oh, right, because I denied a request for admission that I shouldn't have denied. And now what's going to happen? What's opposing counsel going to do to you? I mean, I've given you the rule. It's there on the board. Yeah, maybe.
I was gonna say, first they're gonna show you, like, where you failed to admit it or you denied it.
Sure.
And then they'll probably go, I guess they'll go to the court, or they could go to the court.
Most likely go to the court. And do what? What does 37C2 contemplate, Jessica?
Says that they can move to the party to fail to admit, pay the reasonable expenses including attorney's fee incurred in making the proof. So ask for them to pay these.
Yeah, you're gonna pay the freight for wasting everybody's time. That's the idea. Questions about that? Good, keep going. So sometimes, and I don't want you to get too hung up on this, because generally speaking, again, in my experience, not a great idea. You need to build a case, build your case for discovery violations against the other side. But sometimes you can move immediately for sanctions. Okay? And the classic example of that, it's all contained right there in 37B. The classic example, I think the one that comes up the most, is somebody just not showing up for a deposition. Somebody just refuses to answer interrogatories, just refuses to answer requests for production of documents. The rule contemplates that you can go and ask for sanctions under those circumstances, after you've conferred with opposing counsel, of course. Right? That's always required. So, counsel doesn't answer your interrogatories. You send over a letter that says, hey, your interrogatories are now 2 weeks overdue. Please answer them, and you get a letter back that says, we're not going to answer. Okay, then it might be time to go for sanctions. Right? Maybe. Maybe. But if they write back and say, give us another couple of weeks, you can go run into the court for sanctions. You can. But, as is so often the case in practice, the question is not so much can you, as should you. Right. So the notable exception, right? Lee versus Walters. Or asking for sanctions here. But again, I like this case because it represents the sort of worst of the worst of discovery violations. Something that's gone on for months, and it's every kind of violation that you can imagine under the sun, and it's pretty clear, right? What are the authorities that the plaintiff is trying to get Barnes, who obviously who you don't want to be in this case, right? What are the authorities that the plaintiff is using to try to get Barnes sanctioned? I count 3. It's stated very clearly in the text. Not the 3 I was thinking of. Rule 37. We're trying to get 37. Sanctions. What else?
Failure to cooperate with scheduling depositions, to timely file an answer, and to timely and completely.
Give me a
respond.
chapter and verse. Rule 37 is 1.
We also have FRCP 26 listed,
FRCP, what does that stand for?
26G, and that's.
This is not. FRCP is what? Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay. 26, good, yeah. 26, sanctions under 26. Sanctions under 37. And what else? You guys got your book?
And the court's inherent authority.
The court's inherent authority. The court's inherent authority. Turns out, courts can do a whole lot to you. Whether or not it says specifically what they do in the rules, right? Who's going to tell them not to? What's he actually end up getting sanctioned on? Do they impose the 26 sanctions? Did they impose sanctions under Rule 26? Did anyone read it? Seth?
They did not.
They did not impose sanctions under Rule 26. Why not?
It says that's Barnes and the other defendants do not file any disclosures.
Right. 26 requires your signature to be on something, which requires you to have tendered something to the other side, which this counsel never did. So it said that doesn't apply. But is there any question that defense counsel was in violation of Rule 37? That's not really the big question in this case, is it? What is the big question in this case? What is the court trying to resolve? Not whether the rules were violated, but you got it. I see a look of recognition in your face. What do you got? Amanda? The degree of sanctions is one thing, right? The degree of sanctions, but in determining whether or not to impose sanctions in the first place, no question that you violated the rules, right? No question that there were discovery violations here. What is the court really struggling with?
Substantially justified.
Yeah, whether it was substantially justified. Was there a good reason for it? Okay. Was there a good reason? The court finds no substantial justification or other circumstances. I'm right in the middle of page 5. No substantial justification or other circumstances for avoiding the mandatory award. Right? That's what they're struggling with throughout the entirety of this opinion. Was there a good reason for all this stuff? Is it enough for you to just come back to the court and say you were so busy that you couldn't provide any kind of response to opposing counsel at all. What could Barnes have done to avoid being sanctioned?
His job.
Yes.
Or
I don't disagree with that.
or he could
More
like,
specific. What?
he could provide evidence like saying, you know, I could not reach these people. Like he could provide evidence saying like maybe he tried or that, but he didn't. He failed to provide such evidence.
No, I like the answer. He could have done his job better, actually. Could have responded to some of opposing counsel's correspondence at least. Or if he saw this motion for sanctions coming down the pipe, he's anticipating it, could he have filed something with the court to state this off? What do we think? Yeah?
We can just ask for an extension of time if he had a real good faith reason.
Ask for an extension of time. If he really thinks the material is not discoverable, you can ask for a what? Protective one. The fun procedural question, we'll talk about protective orders, but the fun procedural question here is, could Barnes have appealed this sanctions order? No, we haven't really talked about finality of orders yet. We kind of touched on it. Is that a final order that the court issues? Does it adjudicate the claims that were made? What does this order decide? It's something along the way, isn't it? Whether or not this attorney gets sanctioned doesn't adjudicate the claims, doesn't fully and finally dispose of any of the claims in the lawsuit. So is it a final order? I'd say no too. So unless you have some kind of rule or statute that allows you to do what's called an interlocutory appeal an order that's not final, you gotta wait until this whole thing plays out. All right. Before you go filing a motion to compel, all right, really, I'm psyched for this. The other side has committed egregious discovery violations. They've sent a letter, got no response. Now, keyed up this motion to compel, it's ready to go, gonna file it. What's the last thing you need to do before you fire off that missile? One more thing you need to check, and we talk about it every class session. What?
Check the local rules.
Check the local rules. Check the local rules, because do courts change around the procedures that the hoops that you have to jump through to be able to bring a discovery dispute that they hate resolving discovery disputes. Are they going to make you jump through extra hoops, some courts, to get that to a judge's doorstep? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And again, despite the only 5 minutes difference between the Western District of Kentucky and the Southern District of Indiana, those two courts are worlds apart when it comes to how you deal with discovery disputes. Yeah?
Okay, so quick question. If you get an order for sanctions, are they still compelled to turn over the information that they didn't turn over before? Because at the end of this case, it just talks about the sanctions that were ordered, so I never really figured out if they got the information that they sought originally.
Yeah, I mean, I think realistically speaking, the court is going to make them turn it over, or they're going to continue to get sanctioned.
I just didn't know if at that point it was kind of
back to my prior question. Think about where we are. I mean, there's different ways that the court can sanction it. They can deem those issues admitted, right? They can deem those issues adjudicated in your favor. That's not usually the way it shakes out, but you can ask for that. You can ask for a default judgment. But think about where we are, though. In the Barnes case, that's not a final order. They still have to litigate their case. And if I've been hunting down Barnes or whoever opposing counsel is to try to get this discovery material for months and months and months, the court finally sanctions them. Great, that's very gratifying, but I need that discovery material to be able to prove my case. My case is still not proved. The claims are not adjudicated. There is no final order.
I think I was thinking that by default it would just be admitted.
No, not unless, and there's no indication in that case that that's what happened here.
Right.
You could ask for it.
Okay,
You
okay,
can
I
ask-
didn't know the proper procedure.
If you look at 37B, that is one of the sanctions that is specifically contemplated. And remember, go back to when we talked about default judgments. I said in certain super egregious cases, and I don't think I've ever seen this happen, but if it's really, really bad, and you've really built your discovery violations case against the other side, you could ask for a default judgment, right, as a sanction. Strike the answer, give me a default judgment. That's extreme. Courts aren't going to like to do it. The appellate court's not going to like it, but you can ask for it. The local rule over in Indiana, by the way, requires you to set up a conference, not only to confer with the other side, but to set up a conference with the magistrate judge, which, as I said, is like the mini boss of the federal court system, to discuss the discovery issue before you ever file a motion to compel. So you've got a lot of hoops to jump through over there. Here, not so much. Right? What if you don't want to give something else? Protective orders, we've already touched on it. Defendant tenders an RPOD that says a request for production document. It says produce all the medical records since 1987. Plaintiff says no, I'm not going to do it. Defendant sends over a nasty letter saying yes, you are. Now, put your plaintiff's hat on. What do you do? This discovery dispute is not going to go away on its own. You can't get it worked out. What do you got to do? We've already said. Move for a protective order. You guys see the thing I put up on Blackboard for you? Very generic notice motion order for state court looking for a protective order. Right? There's no voodoo to this. There's no magic. It's a memorandum in which you go through and say, this is where we are with our discovery dispute. This is why I don't think I ought to give it up. Do you cite rules? Sure you do. Do you cite case law? Sure. Same as any other motion. Right? That's easy enough. If you see one coming, if you see discovery dispute coming, the way that you can protect yourself and your client is by going and asking for a protector. Okay. 26C governs the protective orders, but 37D, especially 37D2, tells you what you really want it. Why is that? Failure described in Rule 37 is not excused on the ground that the discovery sought was objectionable unless the party failing to act has a pending motion for a protective order under Rule 26. So in plain English, even if it's something you could be slapped with, even if it's something you could be sanctioned for, you had a pending motion for a protective order that's going to protect you. Okay? just a pending motion, not a granted. CYA. What if you don't get that protective order, and the court says you gotta turn over that stuff, but you still strongly disagree? It's sort of beyond the scope of what we're talking about. You got no further recourse with that court, so you're left with having to do some arcane procedure with the Court of Appeals, or just turning it over. All right, everybody. Now, I think the last time I asked you to do those 20% disclosures, and I said there would be a prize for the funniest disclosure. None of them were funny. So, the prize will go to the first one to respond appropriately to today's scenario. The defense counsel, I mean, you're going to want some really good, you can tell. Your defense counsel asked for medical records dating back to 1987. Same cases we've been doing, right? This is assault case, battery cases. Plaintiff objected only on the basis that the information was not relevant in the meeting of Rule 26. You got an email back from opposing counsel saying your request is ridiculous, and that's it. So get into your groups, and don't get into tiny groups, please, because that takes forever. But get into groups between 5 and 10 people. No one person, 2-person groups. Please find a bigger group to work with. And I started this. Look at Blackboard. I've already put a template up there for you. Yeah, you have to. It's like a trophy. You can live it at your house. Like for, yeah, well, you can think of it as a trophy. There's a template on Blackboard, so don't do more work than what you have. Yeah.
Sending it right now. I almost sent it to Tony Arnold. I'm making it right now. Yeah. Taylor, what's your email? My bad. I typed the word back. Yeah, CHS. What's your email? Got what? That's your company name? You can do any email. This is Louisville.